Okay, so we're at the time where the meeting is going to start, so let's get this party started. You're at the IETF 123, the NETCONF session. My name is Per Andersson. I'm a co-chair. Kent Watson, the co-chair, is with us remotely, and our new NETCONF working group secretary, Mithun Walafil, is with us remotely as well. And next to me, I have John Lindahl as a delegate for this meeting. So you're at the IETF. Note well that there are documents regarding your participation here. You should read those if you have not read them and really understand what they do and what they mean for your participation. There are links on this slide here, BCPs, and I recommend to read them. And note really well that we gather here as individuals and meet professionally, so we can absolutely have disagreements in technical issues. But having said that, we keep it professional and treat with other with respect. If you feel that you are not treated with respect or see something where someone is not treated with respect, approach the chairs or the ombuds team for such happenings. And meeting tips. If you're in person, join the session either with the QR code or through the agenda with the on-site tool. We will, you use this to join the mic queue with raising the hands and participate in the show of hands polls as well. If you're remote, you probably already have joined, of course. Make sure that your video and audio is off if you're not talking or presenting. These are the resources for the site. As I said, if you're remotely, you have probably already joined through one of these links. Otherwise, QR code or this link. Timing, we have a 2-hour slot, and we will having a timer at the bottom of the screen when you're presenting. And please join and take notes. There's a link in the chat for the notes as well. And the queue is, as I said, managed by MeetEcho. Raise your hand and remember to remove yourself from the queue when you're finished. So this is a volunteer organization, depending on your contribution. So we encourage participation. There are several different levels of engagement that you can do, starting off with mailing list engagement, of course, comment on the microphone at the IETF sessions, review a draft, implement a draft, shepherd a document that is going through the working group, or join as our working group secretary. And as I hinted in the beginning, we have a new working group secretary that we're very happy to enlist. There have been several document shepherds that have volunteered time, which we're really appreciative of. And there are a lot more, which we'll see later, documents to shepherd though. And if we don't get more shepherd volunteers, this will fall back on the co-chairs to do the document shepherding, and that might take some time. So please join as document shepherd and draft reviewer. And as we've done over a series of IETF meetings now, we request that authors of all working group documents provide a status update at every IETF meeting. And the status includes recent changes, outstanding issues, plan to complete the document. And the updates are either done as a presentation here at the IETF session or email to the working group list. And active Active document authors for working group documents are encouraged to participate in reviewing other people's documents. So we reciprocate efforts shown by others. And just a note that chairs or co-chairs are human beings, so we miss deadlines. You've probably seen that I'm a co-chair of the list pagination draft, and I sent out the status update this morning. Not that draft cutoff as we usually require. So sometimes even we miss the deadlines we set. So going to the status of post-working group documents, we have a lot of documents that are now post-working group, and we have a lot of documents either waiting for chair go-ahead or waiting for Shepherd write-up. This is the list. You can go to data tracker as well. There's nothing in particular that I'm thinking of that is special. And this is the continuation of the list. So if I recall correctly, there's 18 drafts now in post-working group status. And it's a fair amount of work to get those to send them off for publication. And even after, when they're in the ISG, as you see, there's evaluation going on. So please join and shepherd a document. No. Okay. So this is the status of current working group documents. That list is now much smaller. These 4 that we have are work in progress and will be discussed here. And while Yang notifications versioning has an update posted to lists. And additionally, the Yang library augmented by and private candidates will be presented here as well. Yes, Mahesh. Thank you. Absolutely.
We can't hear Mahesh's mic.
Can you try the next mic below? Can you just check?
Is this any better?
Okay.
All right, thanks. There's one draft, I guess, the HTTP client server. And I just wanted to bring that. I don't know, Kent, if you saw the response from the AD, Mike Bishop, on the 3 discussed points that he, so I need to correlate your response to him and his response kind of back to you to make sure if you two are in sync or if I need to do anything to try to resolve those discussions.
Yes, I saw it. I'm still processing the content. I have not yet tried to reply. I was hoping to reach out to you and discuss before replying. So maybe later today?
Sure. Yeah, either today or even tomorrow is good. I just want to make sure that while I have his attention on the document, that we get through the discussions.
Yep, thank you.
Thomas, thank you.
Yes, Thomas, I have one clarification question on the Yang library augmented by. I did the Shepherd review. I was seeing that there was supposed to be a 2 weeks working group last call, but the period extended, and I think there is no conclusion, if I'm not wrong, right?
No, that is correct. So the working group last call was concluded, but there were, or it was not concluded, but there were outstanding issues. So those have been, there have been several document updates, I think, since the working group last call.
Okay.
But that is correct. It should be concluded, and that is next on the list of on the to-do.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, let's continue then. So this is the agenda. We have some time left at the end this time around. So NetConf over quick is first off to present, and then Yang groupings for quick clients and quick servers. Extensible Yang model for Yang push notifications, NetConf and RESTConf private candidates, and then augmented by addition to the Yang library. This is the chartered items. And then we have non-chartered items, Yang push lite, CBOR encoding for HTTP-based transports for Yang notifications. And then at the end, we have an open mic. So we'll be lenient with time this time, since we have some time at the end. Next, yes. So next presentation, NetConf over quick. Can you load the slides? Yes. Do we have a presenter with us? Okay, interesting. Jinju, David? Yes, go ahead. Xujing? You're in the queue. Do you want to speak? We can't hear you. Okay. Are you a backup presenter, Mark? Can you take it?
Good morning for those here, and good afternoon, evening, or whatever. I'm Marc Blanchet, the fourth one on behalf of the group. So I'm sorry because I've looked at the earlier versions of this slide deck, and I'm replacing the presenter, so I may have to read the slides. Okay, what was? Oh, yeah, right. So there were a comment from the Martin Duke from the TSV Directorate Review about early data, zero RTT, and which zero RTT has replay, attack problems. So I need to, okay, sorry, I need to look at what's next in terms of the slides. So we added some text about that and hopefully answering the comment from Martin about, from the TSV Directorate. Yeah, so back from early versions of the draft, there were things about beep and soap, which is, kind of a no more relevant, so gone. Okay, yeah, right. So there were discussions about, sorry, I have to go back and forth to see what the slides are. Right, so because RPC processing is serialized and ordered within a session, a bidirectional stream must be used for each NetConf session. That was roughly unclear in the previous versions of the draft. Someone, I don't remember, I'm sorry, but someone replied with a comment about that the call home was not discussed in the draft and would actually have an impact on the way we phrase those. So we added something about clarifying what in terms of the call home, who is who in terms of the quick parties. The security considerations, frankly, I don't remember what we did there. Yeah. So I think we're converging well with the document. These are the kind of a few topics remaining, but my take is with another pass, we should be okay. And I think they were Yang comments that per you had addressed. And so I think we're converging to, so maybe something like Montreal will be hopefully done and ready for working group last call. So I think that's, oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, so more details about the actual, use of bidirectional streams and unidirectional streams, error codes. Okay, right. Yeah, so again, we intend most likely to be resolve all the remaining and then ask for a working group last call with the new version. I'm sorry, I would have been more prepared if I knew I was going to present. But any questions or comments?
I put it myself in the queue. Are there implementations of this draft?
Yes, a colleague of mine, we actually said that the last meeting, I think, but he did a proxy, so SSH, quick SSH, and then 2 standard NetConf client and server on each end, and then proxy. So it's not a, it's kind of a halfway, it's an implementation of this, but still kind of a not generating queries and however, that was like in the first versions of the draft, so I don't know if there was anything that may change, but
Mahesh?
Mahesh, it's not related necessarily to this draft directly, and maybe I should have brought it up when we were discussing the list of drafts in different states. And this is relating to the port numbers draft. So it's in the ADQ, and as we were trying to review, I think there were, since one of the slides mentioned removal of all the old protocols, beep, SOAP, I thought it would be worthwhile maybe, and I am happy to take it at the end if the working group feels that that's the time. But basically, there are 3 issues that came up during the review of that particular draft. One was from the TSV art review provided by Michael Texan. There was the expert review done by Joe Touch, and I think there was somewhat minor update or feedback into the working group. So I did try to reach out to Med to see if he is available to give us an update. Maybe he's busy. So let me know how we want to resolve or actually get an update on where we are with the port numbers draft. Sorry to bring it up late.
I put it in the end as well if you want to discuss it more for the open mic.
so you were referring to Joe Touch review on the port number draft, not this one, right?
Not this one.
Okay,
Sorry.
okay,
Yeah.
just to make sure.
So I have one question, Mahesh, if you want to. So we're in this draft, which I'm a co-author of as well. we request a port, which like leans onto the port numbers draft that will release that port. Has that been discussed? Do you know?
So I believe the request was for port 300, if I remember, or
831, if I recall correctly, in this draft.
okay.
And that is released. It was from Beep, I think, or something.
I didn't see anything that Aina had an issue with the port number request, if that's what you're referring to. So no, it hasn't come up as yet. Now, is this an early, let me understand, is this an early allocation request that is there in the draft?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
One slight comment is that
Sure.
we're running over quick, so roughly speaking, we only need the UDP side, but
Oh, it doesn't need, okay.
so, but
That-
just as, context or.
That's true. Yeah, you shouldn't probably need a port number, right?
So I tried reading up on this, and you can run SSH3, and that runs over quick. So
Okay.
I would assume that if you run NetConf over SSH3, that would be on port 830, which is UDP. And I'm not sure that NetConf over quick would make sense to run on the same port or something else.
Okay. Thank you for providing that context. So, you're saying NetConf over quick itself doesn't need a port number, but if we choose to have NetConf running over SSH3, which is not in the scope of this particular draft,
No, that
Yes,
is true.
no,
okay,
not at all.
that we might make use of 830/UDP. Is
Yeah,
that-
I'm thinking even that when running NetConf over quick, you would want a port assigned.
Okay. Is that early port allocation request in the draft?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't remember seeing any issue from IANA on that port request, but I'm happy to go back and review it and see if they have any issue with the request or not.
Okay. Thank you.
Done.
Thank you. So next presenter would be me. My name is Per Andersson. I will present Yang groupings for quick clients and quick servers. Let's go. The goal here is to define reusable Yang groupings for the quick protocol, as with other client server drafts. This will be, as you've seen previously, maybe, reusing TLS client server and UDP client server, and we'll now add IANA Yang modules for quick versions and quick transport parameters. And this is in fact used by the NetConf over quick draft presented previously to add to the NetConf client server, augment into that model. So the updates this time around, there have been initial IANA Yang modules added for the registries, quick versions and quick transport, and the IETF quick common Yang model is updated to use these IANA Yang models and some editorial fixes. It's in an early stage, so the Yang models are actually broken, I realized, and need some more work. But this is the IANA quick versions, which fetches the registry and creates an enum of this, and creates a type for this enum as well. So there are some issues with this. The enum values might not be able to represent IANA quick versions values. So using the value in the enum has the limitation of the range. Currently, I think that contents of this quick version is representable. And then the issue that the registry value is now represented as a string, because the value in Yang has to be in base 10, whereas the registry has it in base 16. The IANA quick transport module has a similar enum, but for the quick transport parameters and a type. more or less the same issues as IANA quick versions. As we can see here, though, the identities are actually, well, printable characters, alphanumeric. So that makes sense, but the values are still hexadecimal in the registry, which can't be represented then in Yang. Maybe it makes sense to have identities instead. This was raised by Med in the review, so we might go that way. And currently, as you see on the right-hand side, there are values that are not representable by the value statement in the enum. So that has to be resolved in a way as well. So solutions to these issues then, maybe use identities instead of enums. It might make more sense to use it later in a list in the IETF quick common module. However, the values for the string, for the registry contents, I'm not sure how to solve that. Maybe just mention the value in the description and leave it to implementations to map it on their own. This is the quick common versions, which then has a leaf list, which uses the IANA quick versions version type. And as you see now, trying to hammer in the point, but using this leaf list with enums, maybe we'll replace it with identities instead. Same goes for transport parameters, looks the same. So the next step is, are we having the correct abstraction level for quick common here? Capturing quick version and quick transports parameters. Switch to identities instead of enums for these parameters. And how are we supposed to encode the registry values? And an open question is, does it make sense to enable or allow arbitrary version and transport parameter values, maybe having this version and transport type union with just an arbitrary string or identities to put in whatever, which makes sense to have identities then, because then it's extendable and you can have a base, say, version or transport parameter identity, which you can subtype or extend. Yes, that is it. So I'm very happy to take any suggestions on how to solve the Yang modeling for the encoding the registry values, and a question for arbitrary version and transport parameters. Yes, Kent, go ahead.
Kent as a contributor. I think first I'd say I don't think we should use identities unless we actually expect to have inheritance, to use the inheritance property. Otherwise, enums work well. That was a point of contention while doing the suite of HTTP client server drafts. Originally, they were identities and later became enumerations. Second, I think I like the idea of the underlying value being in the description statement as opposed to value statement. I don't really feel it's necessary for it to be in the value statement. Generally speaking, the Yang data model is meant to be more human-facing, like human-oriented terms. The humans don't really need to know what the underlying bit value is, so having it so prominently put into the, like, for instance, the value statement may not be necessary. And I thought you had a third point here. Let me see.
The arbitrary versions and transport parameters, maybe?
No, it wasn't that one. Okay, I'll stop there and hold my comment.
Thank you. I can't see the queue. Mark? Okay, Mark.
Marc Blanchet. Just to your last point, I'm involved with deep space stuff, and we need to kind of use a specific non-typical, I would say, parameters for transport for quick, and it doesn't make any sense to have those necessarily fully in the standard one. So having kind of a union or the way to add while the standard stuff is there would be the best way for us to do that. So yes, for a union or in some ways.
Thank you.
Kent, back in queue as a contributor. The idea of having non-standard values being supported also came up in the HTTP client server draft, where they were thinking, non-standard versions of HTTP could be tested. I think it's an open question as to what extent the standard module should support non-standard values. I mean, so I guess I don't have an opinion yet. I just think we should have that discussion as to whether or not how important it is to do that. Because if it is important, then you can imagine pretty much everywhere we create IANA maintain registries, we'd always want to have a union to allow other non-standard values to be represented.
Yeah, so I have to decide on how to go ahead then. Thank you. It seems like the queue is drained. Thank you. Next presenter is extensible Yang model for Yang push notifications. Alex.
Hello to everyone. I'm Alex, and presenting on behalf of the authors an update for the Notif envelope draft. So just as a reminder, what we are doing in this draft, we are defining a new structure for Yang push notifications that is extensible with different metadata. We have defined some already metadata in this draft, such as the host name, sequence numbers, and others. And these to be used in both configured subscriptions and dynamic subscriptions. The changes since the latest iteration, we have updated the draft with changing the leaf, the contents, which are the payloads of the notification, with a must be at the end of the structure, so that all the metadata is first. This helps notably implementations who parse the metadata first and need this metadata to further on treat the message. We have fixed the examples and updated the seed file for CBOR seeds. Then we have also added a non-normative appendix on showing how to extend this header and improve among and implementing some editorial changes, improving the draft. So far, since the latest iteration, we have reached some consensus, and the core ideas has remained stable. We only have had one latest discussion on the mailing list, where Andy and Rashad raised that this implementation of a global switch to enable and disable this extensible Yang model was too disruptive for the client. And Andy and Rashad were also suggesting that a per subscription switch might be a better fit. And so on to this meeting, I want to discuss this latest config switch. And I want to, before discussing this, I want to give a bit of background. The initial proposal of this draft was centralizing all this config switch through an RPC, so that we have only one single point to enable and disable this config. Based on the discussions on the interim and from operators, it was too complex in operations, and so the preference from the group was that first we want a global switch to enable and disable the notice envelope globally on the node, and secondly, when to avoid corner cases and simplify this YAML push envelope, when this config switch was enabled and disabled, tearing down all the sessions. And then Andy feedback on the list that this global switch was too disruptive for the client and suggested a per subscription config switch. And so I have an open question to the group, which type of configuration switch would be better for this solution. The two use cases that I see that having a per subscription config switch is that we have different clients, and then one only supporting envelope, one supporting on the 5277. And then the router is able to send different types of notifications. And the second use case is a single collector who supports both, which to me does not make a lot of sense, but at least these are the two use cases that I found. And yeah, question to both vendors, operators, if this is a valid use case, and whether and which let's say solution do we want for enabling the notif envelope. So I'm open to anyone on the queue.
So Ahmed Al Hassani, Swisscom. As someone who's responsible within my org to deploy this and to explain to all the network engineers for the different networks we operate within Swisscom, it's much easier for me to explain to someone who doesn't know what's Yang Bush and having a basic understanding of Yang, that there is one knob, just turn it on and we can adopt this. So from a usability point of view, for the network engineers, it's much better to have one knob than many. Secondly, from the other side, I mean the team who's actually doing the collection, having two types of messages arrive on the same channel is not a big of a problem, because we cannot update our collector to handle this. And for this, you need maybe one or two software engineers to do it. And then it's easier for like the tens of network engineers that have to deploy this. And for a legacy collector, if it's well handled, if it's well written, I don't see any problem for it just to drop the message, right? If it's a format that doesn't understand. So I'm for use case 2 here, to have just one global knob, make everything easier. Yes, old collectors might struggle a little bit, but I think it's much better for the greater good of making this deployable in production networks in a fast manner. Okay. Thank you.
I can just mention slowly before entering the queue, Rashad, we might want to poll this, so we'll prepare something, try to poll the room.
Okay, Rashad from Equinix. So Alex and I chatted about this a little bit, and just to clarify, when there was the interim, I did vote for the global switch, having my old vendor hat on. But when Andy sent his point a few weeks ago, I forget when exactly, so this doesn't impact me directly in the sense that we're not using this. It was more a theoretical response to, you cannot assume that there's only, on the operator's side, there's one set of collectors. So typically there would be multiple teams, they each manage their own different sets of collectors, and forcing everybody to change from one to the other is disruptive and a problem. In this specific case, I think Thomas made the point that this is not really used and less of a problem. So if the working group decides that, because of that, a global switch makes sense, I'm good with that for this specific case. But for other cases where there would have been wider deployments, that would have been problematic.
Yeah.
Okay,
makes
thank
sense. So I myself don't have a preference, so I am open to the group to decide.
Hi, Alex. So, Rob Wilson. So I think I can see sympathy on both sides of this debate. For us, in our implementation, whatever this draft does will only have a global switch, will only support the new notifications in terms of the Yang push that we've implemented. So it's sort of by the by, it doesn't matter, we'll just deviate the other node if it becomes per interface, or will require that it's always set into a particular mode. Looking at sort of Yang push light, I think the idea is this isn't even an option at all. We'll just sort of converge on using a single new format, and that will just be set in the protocol. I do understand Rashad's comment in terms of like backwards compatibility moving forward with existing collectors. I don't know how much of a problem that is in the general industry. I do think that Andy probably has got a case where he's got existing clients that are using it, and hence I can see his view there. So I'm not sure I have a suggestion. He could always, if in this case, augment into the model to have a per interface option. But the reason I was pushing for global switch is to reduce complexity, both for clients, reduce extra configuration knobs. I think IETF and the network industry in general has too many configuration knobs. We need a lot less of them.
Yeah, I agree.
Thomas, just we had last weekend the hackathon. We tested 4 implementations. So maybe just to give that perspective, we have implementations which, like ROPS, iOS XR, use deviated that knob. So basically, it's you cannot even turn it on. The knob doesn't exist. While others basically you enable it and you can actually not disable it. So so that's from an implementation perspective.
Holger Keller from DT. From a device perspective, we are for simplifying everything. So we would go for the use case 2 because our life cycles would have to test 2 implementations that both are working. And from a collector perspective, Rashad said there are many collections going on in our SNMP world. This is still valid. And that's why we're facing SNMP overload situations, so many devices. So our new strategy is we have one collector, we collect data once, and then we are putting them on a message bus, on a message broker, so that they can consume by many. So I'm going for the use case 2.
Okay.
Kant is a contributor. There may be a use case 1.5. The slide says global versus per subscription, but I think that there's a third option, which is per collector. In the HTTP client server draft, there's a module that does a mapping between the subscription notifications Yang module to the subscriptions, and it's per collector. So I think the diagram is correct. There's does a collector wish to only receive one versus both? I agree. It makes sense that on a per collector basis, it would only receive one. But I don't think the configuration for that would be per subscription. It'd be per collector.
Okay. So that's even lower than the per subscription case in this case. But okay, that's something to, if the working group.
Yeah, that's why I call it a 1.5. It's kind of in between.
Mahesh, interesting 1.5 option, and I thought we were just about ready to do a poll to confirm which of the 2 choices. So does it mean that we are now back on the table trying to figure out which one of the 3 options we want to go with?
So for me, I see the per subscription already low enough. So I wouldn't go into the really per collector side. But again, because I don't see that use case that necessary. I would just implement from an operator's perspective, 1 subscription per collector at the end. And from my understanding, that's what they are doing at the end. But yeah. That's my opinion, at least.
Yeah, Thomas, I think the reason why we don't have the option 1.5 is because the encoding is being set on the subscription level. And since you're changing basically the structure of the header, it would not work on the receiver level. That's my take.
All right. Holger, go ahead. I want to collect all the opinions before I ask for a vote.
So, Holger Keller again. We are in favor of dynamic subscriptions, which means the collector is giving the information to the device, which also means the device doesn't know what is coming in. So there is no collector level where you can put that knob from my point of view.
So, and does our group think there's at least a poll that we could do to?
Yes, just waiting to drain the queue. So let's poll this. Should we use a global switch for envelope use? So far 12 yes, equal amount of no opinion. Apparently 1 no. If you don't agree, can you maybe please explain why? Come to the mic and say why.
Kent is a contributor. I was the no vote because I agree with Andy that changing it would be too disruptive. And I'm thinking mostly about configured subscriptions, not dynamic subscriptions.
Okay, thank you. Terminating the poll. Results are mostly in favor of a global switch. And looking in the room, the participants, we have captured a fair amount of opinions. Mahesh.
Sorry, I just myself quickly in the queue on the no opinion. I just want to make sure that people who said no opinion, meaning they don't have an objection to the yes.
Yeah, is that what people voted no opinion? Is that you don't know enough about the problem? You don't, you're not against using it, or something else? If anyone would like to say something. I see Rashad going to the mic.
Yeah, so I just want to clarify for myself because I voted no opinion and I was part of the debate with Alex and Thomas on this. In this case, I don't mind for the reasons I said previously, whether it's one way or the other. So I don't object to it being global switch. Good?
Thank you. Thank you.
We could do another poll. Do you object for it being a global switch?
Yeah, we could. So you polled you object to using a global switch. Yes, and now no opinion means that you don't care, I guess. But please clarify if that's not the case. So silent is, as you know, consent. It's not usually the case or always, but this time it is. So if you don't say what no opinion means, it means that you don't care about Okay, thank you. No objections found.
Okay, so then the draft is good to go. So yeah, this was the latest issue at the end that needed some discussions. I was expecting some comments on the list, but only Richard and Andy raised. And so there are no other things to do on the draft, so we would request a working group last call to get the latest comments and go through the next stages. And then I just want to inform that on Friday there is a site meeting that we will showcase this the implementation of this notif envelope draft with the message broker integration. And that would be all from me.
Okay, thank you. The chairs have noted that the request of working group last call, and we'll take it to the list after the IETF session. Thank you. Next up, private candidates. Rob Wills.
Good morning. This is an update on the private candidates draft. I'm grateful to my co-author James, who's also here today. So the last time we presented was at IETF 121. Since then, we published a 06 version of the draft, and that's gone to last call. Thank you very much to the people who made comments on that. A few weeks ago, we published a 07 that addresses most of those comments, fixing the usual nits, adding some technical clarifications, and there's a new section describing when a private candidate is updated. Just to go into that in a little bit more detail, to give some background on this, so early versions of the draft, I think the 01, had two very sort of distinct modes that the server could run in, and the draft was very much written in terms of these two modes. And we had feedback in one of the in-person meetings that this should be sort of made more common, and so we did that, but we had some feedback during the last call that said that if the server was automatically updating the private candidate, then this should be exposed to the client because it affects how the client interacts with the server in some cases. So to address these comments, we added a new section 4.4 that describes when an update can occur. There's nothing that's sort of technically new in that section. It just brings together other pieces of the draft into one section to make it clearer. We added a new parameter to the private candidate capability that's advertised by the server, called trigger equals all updates. If the server sets that parameter on the capability, then it means that the server is updating the private candidate whenever the running config changes. And finally, we clarified section 4.6 to clarify the implications on the client when that parameter is set. So just to illustrate that graphically, again, nothing about the update operation it has technically changed except for this parameter on the capability, but these slides just lay the groundwork for a few questions that I want to answer in a few moments' time. So on here we have two clients with two private candidates, both of which start empty. Client 1 makes a change to its private candidate and client 2 can't see that. And then client 2 makes an edit to its private candidate. Client 2 then commits, and so its private candidate is copied to running, and client 1 still doesn't see those changes in its private candidate. And then when client 1 performs an update operation, those changes to running appear in client 1's private candidate. When the trigger equals all updates parameter is set on the capability by the server, the first two steps are the same, namely the private candidates are distinct. And when client 2 commits, again, its private candidate is copied to running, but then straight away the server puts those changes into client 1's private candidate. So the contents of the private candidate is the same in both cases. It's just how you got there is slightly different. To answer a few questions that were raised on the list, this one was actually a really good question. So and it covers the case of implicit deletion when the schema contains when conditions or choice case. So imagine this scenario: a private candidate changes a node X, and that node has a when condition. And then the running changes such that that when would now fail. And then an update occurs into the private candidate. And the question is X now in conflict? Because as a result of the update, the when condition has failed, so X should be implicitly deleted, but X has been changed in the private candidate. The author's view on these implicit deletion cases is that, yes, these should be treated as conflicts if the semantics of implicit deletion is it happens straight away. We welcome any comments on that point. There was a question about system changes to running. We weren't quite sure what was meant by system changes, but I think the general point here is that the draft is written in terms of data stores, and when you commit, the private candidate data store is copied to the running data store, just like the existing shared candidate. So in some sense, it doesn't matter where the changes to running come from. They still get brought into a private candidate when the private candidate is updated. And when you perform a compare operation, you are just comparing the two data stores. So the key point there is that the draft is written in terms of the data stores rather than the changes. And the final question, which was more of a statement really, which is determining which changes have been applied versus being attributed to a specific private candidate is important, and it should be consistent. And the authors definitely agree with this, and indeed one of the goals of the draft is to give clients better control over which changes they're making to the running config compared to the shared candidate where when you commit, you're committing everyone's changes. There's two things I want to say here. So as I said on the previous slide, when you commit, the private candidate data store is copied to the running, and the contents of the private candidate is well specified. So what happens when you commit is very clear in the draft. And also, in terms of the client knowing about the changes it's making, the compare operation helps, and the draft enhances the compare operation. So if you compare against the last update point, this shows the changes that the client has made to its private candidate. And if you compare against the initial creation point, that also shows you changes that have been brought into the private candidate as a result of update operations, regardless of what caused those update operations. In terms of next steps, we intend to publish a 0.8 version shortly after this meeting that will just rework some of the introductory sections, not to change their technical content, but just to make them clearer, again, in response to comments from the last call. And we will clarify text on the implicit deletion. We would like to conclude the last call and move to publication soon. Thank you very much. Kent.
As a contributor, on the point about the implicit deletion to the other candidate, private candidate data store, I'm wondering if it's truly needed. Well, first off, I think it might be surprising, but to the client of the second data store, but is it actually needed? So if the node gets deleted because of a when expression, then and in the private candidate, the other private candidate, it still is trying to configure the node that is presumably deleted, but that should be okay. I mean, that it could go ahead and save that value. It would still be deleted because the when expression would remove it. But if ever, for whatever condition, the when expression were to allow the node to become visible again, then it might be desirable for the value that the other private candidate was trying to provide to come through. So anyway, I'm just thinking that we may not want to automatically delete the node from other private candidates.
I think the I also invite James in case he wants to respond. I think it's important that the private candidate is consistent with the schema. So if as a result of so when you do the update in step 3, you are bringing in those changes that cause the when to fail, and so your only choices are to remove the change that the client made to X, so that it doesn't conflict with the when condition, or to flag that to the client and say that the X is in conflict. But I think you have to tell the client that what the client intended to do has now changed.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
James, don't want to say anything. Okay. So, Rob.
So you got here is the if this implicit deletion happens straight away, I think it happens at the end of your edit config sequence, I suspect. So I think the timing of this is we need to think very carefully of this as to exactly when it's done, but I don't think you can necessarily know.
Do you mean it happens once the edit config request has been processed, or do you mean it could happen at commit time?
I don't know.
Yeah, we weren't certain either. But to us, it makes sense that by the time that the edit request has been processed, the data store is in a consistent state. That makes more sense to us than it being sort of made consistent at commit time, but we invite feedback from the working group on that. We did look to see whether it was... Sorry, Rob, go on.
No, I was just thinking, I think it's probably right it happens at the edit time, but I think this is something we need to check quite carefully, because otherwise if you go a different direction here to what servers are doing, it will cause pain.
Understood. James.
Just responding to that one. Yeah, I think our belief is that it's actually at edit time for when evaluation. That's kind of where we took this from, rather than at commit time.
I think you're probably right.
So, Kent, thank you.
Yeah, as a contributor, some systems allow the private candidate data store to become inconsistent, but it provides warnings when it's inconsistent. At the time of commit, it enforces, right? So you can't actually commit it until the private candidate data store is completely consistent.
That's interesting. Ken, do you know, does that include this case of implicit deletion?
No, this is a general statement about the consistency of data stores in private candidates.
Thank you, that's useful context.
Wim Hendricks. Sorry. I just wanted to give a general thing. If you look to, it's basically what you're doing is that I haven't basically looked at the details, but just in general, what you're trying to do here is a three-way merge, what is implemented in Git, right? So if you look to what happens there, they basically, for them, this is a conflict, right? So you basically compare running, and if you have a change in running versus your private and you're trying to merge, right? It results in a conflict, and then it's presented to the user, and then you have to interact. So from that perspective, I agree that you should see this as a conflict.
Yes, yeah. Thank you. Yes. I think one of the key underpinnings of this question was knowing whether this deletion should happen straight away, because if it should, then yes, sort of obviously it's this three-way merge, and this was just something we wanted to clarify. I think that's the end of the questions. I just wanted to say this is my first internet draft, and it's been really enjoyable working on it, and I'm very grateful to the working group for their continued involvement and engagement with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to hear that you enjoy the work. Next up, augmented bio addition to the Yang library. Joyao, ready?
Hello? Yes.
We hear you.
Okay. So I'm Joyao, and I will present the update for augmented by addition into the IETF Young library. Since the IETF 122, we have submitted from version 3 to version 10. 10 I submitted yesterday, and I will also include this in the presentation later. On 26th of June, we started the work group last call on version 5, and during which we submitted from version 5 to 8. And then we also undergo the OPS-DIR review and the Young Doctor review. And currently we are at version 10. And current status of the draft is still in work group last call. And then I will undergo the changes of conclude the main changes happen in different versions. So from version 3 to 5, we were mainly updating the YAM module, IETF YAM library augmented byte. And changes include that we organize the augments content from directly having them in the augment statements to a grouping. And we also add augmentation inside this module of the augmented byte to the module state container, even though it's a deprecated container, to deal with the situation proposed by Andy that there could be devices that they are still using this container, even though it's loading the IETF YAM library from RFC 8525. And to sync with these changes, we have deleted the Appendix B, which is proposing an extra YAM module for augmenting the IETF YAM library of RFC 7895. And we also updated module revision to avoid misleading, because there is a lot of changes in the YAM module. And in version 6, we were mainly doing text improvement. In section 1, we have rewritten the introduction and added terminology definition for reverse dependencies. And we also improved the text to avoid possible misleading understanding about the reverse dependency and external dependencies. In section 4, about the introduction to the YAM module, we added in the module description statements explaining the scope of this module, for which the augmented by only concerns direct augments, and the base module and the augmented by module should come from the same module set. And in Appendix 8, we have deleted the invalid YAM lint validation example and added some setup text for the valid example. Yeah. And for 7 to 9, we have changed the reference in INA consideration to RFC2B. And in terms of the module format, we have updated the line length and spacing. And we also added a section 5 operational consideration according to Thomas' suggestion to further explain to the implementers of that the base module and the augmented by module should be in the same module set. And according to the Shen's review from the OPS-DIR review, we have added in the title to indicate that this draft update RFC 8525, and that was the changes in version 10. So so far we believe we have addressed all the comments in mailing list from work group last call, and also the Young Doctor review and the OPS-DIR reviews. And our next step is to close the work group last call. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob?
Thanks for the update. So I'm not quite sure whether we should quite close the work group last call just yet. And the reason is the augmented by, where we are restricting it such that the augmented by is only listing modules within the same module set. That's quite a significant, I guess, restriction on how this is used. by having that limitation. Now, well, I've had quite a lot of discussion with Thomas and Per and Jan and various other people over the hackathon weekend. And I think it ultimately comes down to two observations. One, it was pointed out that deviations already have this limitation in terms of any deviated modules have to be listed in the same module set. And then the second one is also like an operational thing, is like how are people really using module sets today? So if you have a single module set per schema, then effectively there's sort of no issues. It's like each module set's at a top level, then this restriction is fairly easy. You can just limit the augmented by modules in each module set to those. So you have different classes of augmented by statements. For the same module, if it's in different module sets, that's okay. So I know Tom's been asking various people as to what they're doing today. I think we're probably okay with that same restriction. I think this draft needs to be really clear on this point. Maybe more than operational considerations, I think it needs to say maybe the introduction that this is a limitation to using this draft. And I think we should make sure that everyone is aware of this limitation and can accept this going forward in terms of if this is being used. So that's my comment.
Thank you very much. And for that, I believe we need a lot of we need support of the implementers to tell us what is the possible restriction on their side. So thank you very much for that feedback, and we will consider it.
So just a quick question to the chairs. I don't know if this is something worth polling on. I don't know if people know the issue well enough.
We're discussing it.
Okay.
So, Benoit Claes, so actually we addressed that in the operational consideration in the latest draft. We say it's a restriction because it was already mentioned by Andy. Now the question is, since we have the same limitation for deviation, what do you expect from this document? I mean, it's mentioned, it's a limitation. I mean, what else?
I think if the people here are willing to accept this limitation, then I would say operational consideration is good. I think the introduction should also pull this out, so it's very clear that somebody who's reading this document at the beginning knows this limitation is there, and make sure that the working group is aware that it's there effectively, and everyone's accepting that we're going to have this limitation, and that's a reasonable choice.
So a clarifying question, do you still want to poll us to ask if the working group wants to add this to the introduction to the document, or do you want to leave that to the authors?
I think the question that I would like to ask the working group is, are they happy with this limitation that effectively it means if you're using augmented by, then you're sort of restricted probably to a single module set rather than a union of module sets? I don't know how you write that question.
Well, that's a mouthful. But as Benoit said, that this this limitation exists for deviations.
The difference with deviations is it's far easier to mitigate that. So that the deviations, I don't think that's the same problem with here. The fact that the augmented by can differ in terms of how you put the module sets together makes it a different class of problem. It's not exactly the same.
Well, I'm not sure, because then if you poll for that, then you're going to poll that are we happy with the limitation on deviation? Then we have a bigger problem.
The limitation on deviations is already there in the RFC. That's already published. And that one is easy to live with. This one is harder. This is making more of an impact.
Thomas, what I can ask to the discussion, I will put a link in the chat. So from the hackathon, we looked at the problem in 4 implementations, and you can make yourself also an opinion how currently the node sets and the data store schemas are currently used in the industry.
I just want to comment that maybe putting this sentence in the core of the draft rather than on the operational considerations might ease this issue. And I somehow agree with Rob that maybe just putting on the operational considerations, people might miss this bit. So yeah, just this comment.
Kent, as a contributor to Rob, does this have any impact to the packages, Yang packages from NetMod?
So on Yang packages, we've taken out deviations, so we don't list deviations in packages, so that solves the deviations issue. And I would try hard not to introduce the augmented by for packages, because it puts the dependency in the reverse direction. So with packages where they're being built up, and the same with the module sets where they're being built up, and in Yang where you can augment into other modules, dependencies pointing from the module that's doing the augmenting into the augmented module. By listing these in the reverse direction, that's where the problem comes out effectively. Another solution for this draft, and I'm not suggesting, is you could list these at the schema level, not the module set level. And again, that problem would go away. So you're just reporting it. But that's a much bigger change to this draft and probably not necessary. So for packages, I would try hard not to have a similar extension.
So Ahmed Al-Hassani, Swisscom. Couple points to make here. The reverse dependency is a strength and, let's say, a hardship in Yang. And from someone who is working on how to validate the messages that are coming from Yang to make sure they are correct according to the schema, yes, we will need to be able to always know all the dependency, either direct or reverse, to be able to correctly validate a message. So this augmented by is very important for us, and I'm sad that the Yang packages doesn't account for it. So from someone who's going to validate this, so that means the Yang library is our only way to go to have an understanding of what's coming from the router so we can validate it in the collection side. That being said, yes, the augmented by adds additional restriction, but this have been done already with the deviation. And that restriction is already well described in the Yang module itself. This is a Yang rule. This is not inventing anything new. This is a Yang rule for the leaf ref, how it works. This is how the deviation was worked before. So I think in the draft, we are not adding anything new here other than saying this is how we specify it. We rely on leaf ref, which is well defined in Yang. So let's not make exceptions for something that is already there. That's the 2 cents I have to take.
So in terms of what this extension is doing, it's not giving you information. So the Yang library output already has all the information you need, both in terms of deviations and in terms of the augments, because you get the list of modules, you compile the schema. As you compile the schema, you have all this information, because the Yang modules themselves say that they're deviating another module. A Yang module itself says it's augmenting another module. So all this is doing is an optimization to say you don't have to receive all the modules. You don't have to compile the complete schema. It's giving you a path to compile a subset of that schema. And that's ultimately the sort of what's causing the issue here. So in terms of Yang packages, I would hope that the tooling that processes Yang packages can do it quickly enough that it'll take a second or two to take all of the schema and give you the same information without having to actually export it.
Just want to mention this is, yes, an optimization problem, but when you're talking production scale with thousands of routers, having to parse 5 Yang modules to validate a subscription rather than one big Yang library, it's going to make a huge difference on the collection side.
But that you can also hash the results, so you don't have to do it. And Yang packages is designed so you don't have to fetch the Yang modules at all, that you already know what the scheme is going to be.
James coming. I just wanted to echo what Robert said, actually, that adding this additional information that is kind of reversing the nice benefit that augmentations have, where you can augment into a module without knowing that module knowing anything about it, and then having to rework that and provide the information in the reverse direction is complex and arguably unneeded.
So let's try to run a poll. Does the working group accept the limitation that augmented by only works per module set? I hope I captured it correctly. Are you satisfied with the wording? Well, yes, seems like it. And once again, as you probably heard in the ops area working groups, no opinion does it mean that you don't understand or don't care. in this case, I don't know. So maybe if someone wants to clarify.
So I voted no opinion. I certainly understand the problem. That's quite clear. I voted no opinion because I don't know for certain at this stage there's not an issue. I think it's going to be okay for us. We're still checking that. But actually, for me, I wanted just to get a read for everyone else to see if anyone else was going to find this an issue or not. And it looks to me like people either can accept it or it's going to be fine.
Yeah, Thomas, in queue.
And I just wanted to mention that we reached out to all the implementers just also to get the same feedback back. If there will be something, then we still can discuss it.
Yep. Okay. So closing the poll, no one doesn't accept it on the polling at least. Thank you. I think the queue is drained, and oh, Benoit.
So Benoit speaking. So thank you for the poll. So I'm not sure what the next step is for the document then. Is this
From what I heard,
all?
from what I heard in the room, there have been two suggestions to put it more in the core or in the introduction, to move a bit outside of the operation considerations.
Right, so we have it right now in the Yang model description, if not mistaken. We did it in the operational part, but we want to stress it earlier in the document. This is the conclusion?
I think so, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Rob, do you want to? No. So we're now out of chartered items on the agenda and entering the unchartered items territory. And now we're listening to Yang Push Light. By Rob Wilton.
Thank you. So I'm going to give you an update on Yang Push Light and also just a reminder of exactly what we're doing here. Hopefully most of you know in this room, but in case anyone doesn't. Also to thank there's various other people participating in these discussions and on this draft as well. So what is Yang Push Light? Effectively, it's an effort to simplify Yang Push. So various of us have been implementing Yang Push and subscribe notifications for the sort of telemetry use case, and we've hit various issues. And so I think that quite a few of our implementations don't actually implement Yang Push exactly as specified. It's something that's quite close, but it's not the same. There's also a lot of options in Yang Push that we know from the discussion of the various vendors and other vendors, including ourselves, that we can never really implement those. They're too complicated, they're too expensive. And through the discussions we've had with the operators, they're not things that they need or certainly don't need now in the core part of the specification. We also know within the industry that GNMI has quite a lot of adoption. There's reasons why we still think Yang Push or Yang Push Lite is the right thing to do, but we're trying to get some more alignment with the GNMI specification as well. And partly that's so that from an implementation perspective, you can share a lot of the implementation between GNMI and Yang Push or Yang Push Lite. And that's what we're doing today. In terms of Yang Push, Thomas has been pushing, along with other people, lots of extensions to Yang Push and the whole ecosystem to make it meet the requirements of what they're trying to do, including the augmented by and things like that. So some of those will be merged into Yang Push Lite, and it'll sort of simplify the landscape of the drafts and things. And the last one, sort of key one, is to allow for more efficient implementation. So this is back to what some of the same sort of points that in terms of Yang Push, some of the requirements that it makes in terms of returning the data and as a single message doesn't work for us. That we for most devices, you can't necessarily buffer an arbitrarily large message before you send it out, or otherwise have to delay sending the message out to collect a lot of data. Just a reminder as to what it's not. We're not trying to build a whole brand new protocol here from scratch. This isn't like a let's start from scratch and do something again. The idea is that we evolve what's there and we try and get this balance between what Yang Push is today, the simplifications and extensions we want to put in, and bring some ideas in from GNMI. So there's no reinventing the wheel going on. So as to why we're doing this, I sort of pretty much covered that, except for why not GNMI. So one of the issues that some of the people have reported when using GNMI is that because the specification is lighter in terms of how much review it's had over time, is that the implementations have more inconsistencies between the implementations. So one of the driving goals here, and it's a driving goal in terms of the process that we're discussing this with the other vendors and the operators, is that we all get to quite clear agreement as to what's the core functionality that we all want to implement, and do it in the same way so that we end up with like a more consistent implementation across the industry. So that's like a driving factor here. And otherwise, I just want to have some nice pictures. The clicker's working. Right, so what's changed since the last IETF meeting? Unfortunately, less than I would have liked in terms of this document, and that's simply because I haven't had enough time to organize discussions. I spent quite a lot of time in Yang packages, but there's been some progress in the document over this phase, and we expect to do more over the next one. One of the sort of discussions and agreements is to have more alignment between dynamic and configured subscriptions. In Yang Push, these have quite different state machines and quite different behaviors in various cases, whereas the consensus for certainly between the authors and things that we're discussing is we should try and get these to be as aligned as closely as possible, to have the same state machine, to have the same behavior. And really the difference between a configured and dynamic subscription should be down to how it is instantiated, rather than anything more deep than that. There might be some tweaks and some slight differences between the two, but there's an aim to do that. I've made some changes to the subscription identifier. So Yang Push used numerical identifiers for this, but that sort of means that you have to partition the space and makes it harder to use. We want to move towards string identifiers here, probably limited to like some sort of like a Yang identifier, so we restrict spaces and things. And then the last one is, in terms of the draft, we had moved to allow multiple subscription paths per subscription, and actually we think this adds more complexity than we want, and we want to go back to having a single path. So that's another change we've made. We have had a chance to discuss for a couple of hours this week, and some of the conclusions that we had, the more alignment between configured and dynamic subscriptions, we discussed that a bit more, and hence the draft is sort of being updated in that way. We've had more discussion on decomposed subscriptions and the timestamps related to that. I've got another slide on that. And there's some discussion on whether the protocol and Yang config model and maybe the RPC model should be split out into separate drafts. So I've got a slide on this a bit later. I think this might be a good thing to ask for some initial feedback from the working group if they have any opinions, strong opinions in this direction. This is obviously not a working group document yet, but it'd be good to try and get a feel for which direction the working group might want us to go, because it'll have quite an impact on the structure of the document. So I've sort of talked about this already, more alignment between configured and dynamic subscriptions. So I've got a new ant picture for this, and you can see the ants are different colors. So they're very similar, they're close to what they look like, but there's some differences. And I said we should be about setup, we should try and match the state machine behavior, and there'll be some probably slight variations and things, but again, I think we'll try to drive down to minimize those changes, but I've covered this already. Decomposed subscriptions. So this is one of the key things about trying to make it more efficient. And effectively, one of the key things about Yang Push is this idea that you make a subscription to a given data path and you return on each periodic subscription all the data under that particular subscription path. And it may be that some devices would stream that out as they're building up the message, but it means you have to fetch all the data together in a particular order. It may be other devices that get all the data together, aggregate it together, and then return it. So they're buffering a lot of data. And GNMI doesn't do this. It allows you to return the data in smaller chunks. And that's something that we want Yang Push Lite to be able to do for efficiency reasons, for being able to align the data together, and to send it out more efficiently, more quickly, and have better timestamps. But it adds complexity for the client in terms of doing this. And we need to be very careful about how this is specified to make sure we get a right balance between what's easier for the servers and publishers to do, and yet still allow the clients to process this data efficiently. So one of the key things that came out of the discussions we had earlier this week is that if you allow these messages to be sent out from multiple different sort of collectors or different times of separate messages, you'd need to be able to aggregate those back into a single update to like a time series database or whatever you're updating. And it turned out that one of the key fields to do this was to have a common timestamp that's the same for all these bits of data. And that wasn't currently in Yang Push or what we had in Yang Push Lite. So what we're trying to do is to have a common timestamp for all of these messages that for a given subscription period poll. But at the same time, I'd also like to keep in there the fact that you try and give a timestamp of when the data was actually changed. So you have both of those. So there's been some discussion and alignment between those. Again, trying to make sure that we don't have too many timestamps here. There is potentially, it means that we may be rather directly using the Yang notifications draft. I've got the notification envelope draft, that we have something that is slightly similar, very similar to that draft, but slightly different, because we might want to sort of take event time out to have this common timestamp or repurpose it. So, so that's a consideration there. Kent, do you want to ask your question now?
Yes, as a contributor. You mentioned having two timestamps. I'm just wondering, would the timestamp be for when the data was committed or when it was applied?
Say that again. When the timestamp is for when?
Is the timestamp, the second timestamp, would it be for when the data was committed or when it was applied? Because for some routers, it takes minutes for it to be applied.
You're thinking in terms of configuration rather than operational data. I think it's basically when the closest point of time that you observe the data. So within our system, when a periodic subscription period timer fires, we will go and ask all the components to get and return the data and to code it and send them. And so each of those components, when they're fetching the data from wherever they get it from, they'll get a timestamp of when they are retrieving that data. And that's the second one. The observation time is as close as possible to when the counters are read from the hardware or when you fetch it from the components. Whereas the first timestamp is locked to when you did the periodic gathering event across all of those like sub-subscriptions. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you.
And you'll notice that ChatGPT has an ant that's made up of little ants here. That's my decomposed subscription. So I want to make sure that the quality of my diagrams comes through. Joe's not even in the room. I can't believe he's not here. For all the effort I went to, it's late last night. Right. So this was the question I wanted to come to. I mentioned it earlier, and this is one I'd like to ask the room about, is there's this question about whether we should try and split at least the configuration model, maybe the RPC model, and maybe even the notification, I don't know, out into a separate draft. And so that you have one draft that sort of defines the core functionality, and you have a separate draft that sort of defines the data model that goes with it. And there's various arguments as to why this might be a good idea. So certainly in terms of implementations, there's quite a lot of industry support, I think, for implementing Yang Push Lite at the protocol level. But in terms of implementing IETF data models for configuration, that's much weaker in the industry space. So there is some limited support there, but there's a lot of people who don't want to do that. They'll either use native models or open config. So people who want to implement this draft would like to be able to say, we implement this draft, but actually there's this bit, the data model, we're not going to implement. So there's an argument for that. There's a second argument to say, well, actually, for a lot of documents, IETF documents, the data model, the Yang data model, doesn't often go into the core protocol specification. So you've got how many tens or hundreds of BGP specification documents, and you have one or two separate Yang documents. And there's been a drive more widely, potentially within the IETF space, of maybe trying to get those data models out of drafts altogether and into GitHub or something similar, so that they can potentially evolve more quickly. Another potential advantage that Yang push light specification is currently weighing about 130 pages, and some people have observed that that's not very light for an IETF document. So again, splitting it up might make the document simpler in that sort of sense. The reasons why we might not want to do this is it might be easier to describe the protocol where you have concrete data models to refer to and concrete examples in the Yang push light document, as in it'd be hard to sort of have concrete messages in that document if the format that defines the messages isn't in there. And because in terms of drafts having a separation between the data model and the protocol, Yang push is a bit different than most of these IETF protocols because it's the key thing about the protocol is the encoding, in the same way that like the NETCONF spec probably includes the data model that goes there. So I don't think that this is set in stone. I'll take some questions on this, but then hopefully we can ask a poll to see if people, whether they care one way or another, strongly or not, and then we'll sort of feed that into the discussions we're having with the authors, if that's possible. So who's up? Is it Rashad up next? Chop, chop.
Great slide, Rob.
Thank you.
I think my preference is until we have a way to push Yang models outside of RFCs, I personally prefer to have the model with the document. I think it's easier to review. It's self-contained as opposed to having cross-reference, and having also at development time, we've seen cases in BFD recently where there's 3 docs and there's 3 pen holders, and then one makes a change in one and not in the other. It's been a bit of pain to review and cross-reference. Maybe that doesn't apply to this doc, but anyway.
That's on that last point, I think that one probably is solvable through the build process and things like that. So to make sure there is extra overhead in terms of keeping them in sync a bit in terms of consistency, but that one maybe might be so. But your point's taken. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, Thomas, also +1 on putting basically the Yang model outside of the document. I think on the build process, that's great. Coming from like a list of documents currently with Yang push, and one of the reasoning on Yang push light was actually we want one document where everything is coming together. I feel we are now circling back again when you start separating the two.
Maybe, but it is a long document, and maybe it's longer than it needs to be, but there aren't that many examples in there yet. So it's going to end up being quite a weighty tome that gets published. And there is an argument to say that actually you move some of this stuff out, it makes it a bit less. I don't think it's the same as we're having today with lots of separate things. I think this would probably be one model, one document that describes the protocol, and a separate one that defines the data model. It is, but yes, point taken. So,
but at the end, an implementer needs to implement both, right?
Yes. Yes.
Alex Insalion, I have rather a preference for putting everything on the single draft. I've seen some different protocols in other working groups that they're putting in differently. They're trying every time to sync up. Sometimes they don't match. And when you're reading documents and you want to implement everything, I kind of struggle to go back and forth in the different documents. And anyway, to my understanding, the configuration side, at least from what I've seen, it's the last step of the implementation. And anyway, if someone don't want to implement that, anyway, the protocol is in there and you have the IETF module on the same document. So at least in my opinion, I think it should be on the same document.
I think for the last point, it's to do with like the process between operators and vendors in terms of, do you support this RFC? There's something that's easier just to say yes or no, rather than saying yes with these caveats. And so if the data model does stay in the document, I think it's very likely that we'd have some text to say this is is optional to implement the configuration data model, and probably the dynamic subscriptions as well. So it ends up muddying the water a little bit.
Per, as a contributor, I have a clarifying question. You're talking about the configuration model, but also encoding Yang model, or is it, this is for the configuration of, say, subscriptions?
The answer is I don't know. So definitely there's a desire to take the configuration model out, but it might be also to take the dynamic RPCs out, possibly as well for configuring or setting up dynamic subscriptions and terminating them. I don't know whether it also mean that the message format for the actual Yang push operation messages, the notifications, would also be in a separate document as well. It's an issue that came up this week in terms of discussion. I think the config was the main driver, but it might be you separate the whole lot. I don't know.
Okay, thanks.
Mahesh speaking as a contributor. Later today in OPSEA working group, I will be doing a presentation on how to move Yang models outside of a document. And as part of that, I am looking for volunteers to be the experiment. So Rob, are you signing up to be the experimental draft that will try that?
Okay, but just, I think that's reasonable, thank you. And thank you for flagging that, but be aware that this document is sort of different from most of the IETF documents where you've got a separate protocol and then you've got a separate data model just for setting it up. Here, the data model and the protocol are somewhat more intertwined.
Okay, Niels Warnke, DT. I just also wanted to chip in. I find it much easier to read and follow if it's a comprehensive document. So also +1 for having that in one single one.
Okay.
Ahmed Al-Hassani, Swisscom. So I hear two different reasons for either splitting or keeping the document keeping everything in one document. One is the consistency to develop it. So it's easier to be more consistent when you have one document. And then at the end of the day is the adaptation. For the vendors, it's easier for them to say like, yes, I support this, I don't support that. Isn't it too early to ask this question now? And this work is not still yet adopted as a working group. So my personal preference is to continue as one document and then come back and ask that question again when it's closer to last call, where the implementation from the vendors is a more major concern than right now, right?
Yeah, that's fair. And yes, it is an early time to ask the working group. I'm not sure I'd want to do it close to last call because I think it will change the structure of the document quite significantly in terms of how you write it and how you reference bits of text. So that was why I was asking for sort of some guidance now, is so that we don't spend a lot of work going down one direction and then have to change it later down the line. So that was the reason for asking. I don't know, Nils, were you back in the queue or was that from earlier? Was anyone else in the queue? There's one more hiding.
Hi, yeah, Bharadwaja here. I'm giving like an implementator's perspective and sort of a personal opinion. I think it would be easier if everything was in one document, but also I wouldn't mind it if there were cross-reference against documents, but it was explained clearly beforehand that you would have to go through here for this and here for this, and then sort of linked in like the order. I feel like the issue with Yang push right now is, I mean, though it is predefined that it's available across all these documents, it feels like the order in which the documents are read is sort of unclear. Also, I wouldn't mind supporting that the Yang data model is separated out of the document itself. Would make it easier from an implementation perspective. Yeah.
So I struggled slightly to hear exactly what you were saying because of your mic was clipping slightly. Could you put your message into the chat for the working group as well? I think I heard the first bit of you saying that you find a single document easier, but you also said that maybe taking the Yang data models out was also something. Is that what I heard? Yeah. Okay.
Right. So, I just wanted to mention that I'll put that in the chat. I think that make it simpler.
Thank you.
Do you want to poll this question anyway? No.
You can do. It's up to you. Only if you've got it written ready.
Yes, I do. Should the Yang module be in the same document? Yes or no opinion? And I would say no opinion here means that you don't care. You understand what it means.
Oh. I know the poll's still going, but this is really interesting because at the mic line, I heard lots of people saying, yes, put it in the same document, but there's quite a few people who are saying no as well, who haven't spoken to this. So, but maybe that's about taking Yang models out altogether. I don't know. Balazs?
I think taking out the Yang module is a good idea, but just the Yang module, so no descriptions around the Yang module. So we don't want two RFCs, just somehow, at least I don't want two RFCs, just to take the Yang module to make it more easy to develop.
So again, I didn't quite hear you. So you're basically saying one RFC, but the Yang model in GitHub. Is that my correct interpretation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mahesh speaking. Maybe I'm giving this a bit too much because I would rather have this discussion in Ops Area Working Group when we do this presentation. But yes, what Balazs just said is kind of the idea that it's a single draft with a reference to the model in some source control mechanism.
Okay.
I just wanted to comment on the poll. Maybe people are unclear about which Yang model we're talking about specifically here, because we've been talking about the message formatting and the configuration model, and you also mentioned dynamic subscriptions, so maybe that's why the poll's unclear.
Okay. I mean, I probably from what's written at the moment, we'll carry on with a single Yang model in the document is what I'll take that as. And then this is left as an open thing to consider down the line, maybe, and particularly the one that happens in Ops Area in terms of taking Yang models out of drafts altogether, which I was a proponent for. Okay, can I just move?
Yeah, so you have some indication now. I think.
Yes, thank you.
For this.
I think I've only got a couple of quick slides. I know I'm over time, so sorry for that.
Sorry, Kent as a contributor. I think having in the document now is good. If we were to take it out later, we would publish the two RFCs together simultaneously.
Yes, that makes sense. So the plan is as before, I'll try and do a lot better, spend more time on this, and we'll work through this over the next few months. We'll have some regular meetings. We're still trying to resolve the big issues first and get forward. I'm hoping we can make some progress. Maybe we can get to an interim meeting. I don't know. So, but it feels like the document still needs to progress quite a lot further and some big issues to be resolved. And that's the details of where the draft is. It's still an individual draft. I don't think we should be asked for adoption just yet. I think we want to evolve it more. That explains how I started with the document, pulled all the text together. Still needs more work there. And we're having shared meetings with we'll have shared meetings with the authors going forward. And that's it, I think. This one is fine. I think we've got that in terms of time.
Rashad?
So I know the document is not adopted yet, but long-term or medium-term, do you have plans once you start implementing to have a hackathon on the client side? Because you were talking about GNMI. One of the reasons is all the free code. So I think many people would love to have open source on the client side.
Yeah, so in my head, I sort of think if we can resolve the main issues of the draft at the point we adopt, then that's going to be the same sort of point that we think that we'll start to work on implementation. So it's too early to do it now because there could be some significant changes. But once like the data models and things sort of firm up more and become minor changes, and in terms of particularly the message format and things like that, and the decomposers subscriptions, I think that's the key bit. And then yes, so yeah, I think we will do that.
So thanks. So what I understand is you're saying we're going to do that in Montreal?
That's exactly what I'm said, I'm sure. Yeah, I think I'm done. So.
Okay, thank you. So next up, CBOR encoding for HTTPS-based transport for Yang notifications. You have slide control?
Yeah, hi. I hope I'm audible, right?
Yes.
Cool. Yeah. So, hi, I'm Siddharth, and we're a group of undergraduate students from the National Institute of Technology, Karnataka, in India. We will be talking about our draft, the CBOR encoding for HTTPS-based transport for Yang notifications. So, To provide some context for this, this draft is an extension of the HTTPS notif draft, which we worked on implementing thanks to help from Mahesh and Kent, the authors of the draft, as well as our professor, Mr. Mohit Thailiani, who is in Madrid now. Give you a quick draft. The notif draft publisher and a receiver, and the interactions between them. The publisher sends a GET request initially to the capabilities resource of a receiver, which must be defined. And the publisher then learns the receiver's capabilities, whatever it supports, from the response body. And then the publisher can go on constantly posting requests in, of course, the request body must conform to a Yang data model. And the receiver, upon successfully verifying the data or doing whatever logic, sends a 204 no response. And the draft itself defines JSON and XML to be the supported encoding formats. What our draft talks about is extending the HTTPS notif draft encoding formats, currently JSON and XML, and adds CBOR to that. So why CBOR? Of course, it maximizes. It's a widely used encoding standard, and we did perform some tests which proved that it provides greater throughput in low bandwidth networks. The HTTPS draft itself defines a transport mechanism clearly between a publisher and receiver, and HTTPS also allows you to augment itself with different encoding options. So our draft talks specifically about the CBOR encoding option with usage of both SIDs and named identifiers in our draft. So quick overview of our draft is we give examples for the get and post notification, which was discussed in the HTTPS notif draft, using both, of course, named identifiers and SIDs. With respect to the implementation details, Vartika will take over.
Hello, everyone. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we began the implementation by first implementing the HTTPS notif draft, and then we extended it by also enabling CBOR encoding for the notifications. So we implemented the collector and the publisher both in Python. So the collector supports the two endpoints, the capabilities endpoint and the relay notifications endpoint. We've also integrated our collector with Kafka. We took inspiration from the Yang push architecture for this. So once the collector receives the relay notification, we publish the notification data into the designated Kafka topic. And there's a parallelly running Kafka consumer, which consumes these messages from the designated topic and inserts it into a TSDB. And in our implementation, we used InfluxDB as our time series database. Additionally, we also containerized the entire code, which would make it easy to run this whole project on any environment without any setup issues. We also integrated our collector with Prometheus and Grafana to measure certain metrics such as the request counts, the request latencies, and the post request body size. We can view these metrics using Grafana to visualize it better. We've also performed some performance analysis, which Meher would talk about.
Yeah. So, as mentioned, we've collected a lot of metrics based on which, and from the author's input, based on which we've got the idea to sort of perform analysis of the encoding formats under varying bandwidth. So what we've done is we've made a virtual environment setup where we run the publisher and a collector in a different virtual environment, all connected using VETs. We had run the publisher on multiple threads and concurrently push notifications to the collector across varying bandwidth. We limited the bandwidth using a token bucket filter queuing discipline. So these are the results that we've got, and you can see on the x-axis there's the varying bandwidth, and on the y-axis is the throughput of the network, the request per second. The blue color indicates the JSON encoding, the orange for XML, and green for CBOR. And we observe that on the lower bandwidth spectrum, CBOR outperforms JSON and XML encoding. This is sort of obvious because it's more concise due to lesser size, and at lower bandwidths is where there is a network bottleneck. At higher bandwidths, there is no network performance bottleneck, and all of them perform similarly because it's on the processor where you're just encoding everything into the particular format. So using these results, what we've done is we proposed the draft. While implementing all of this, there is a few challenges that we faced. One was the lack of tooling and support for Yang in general, in the sense that we were using Yangs in Python for validating our Yang, and a lot of structures like SX structure wasn't being validated. We also recognized lack of support for CBOR in Yang. So we had to have a few intermediary steps to convert to JSON, which sort of affected our numbers during the performance analysis. But this particular problem was brought to us even by a lot of other teams working in Yang Push as well. So we've decided to work on filling the gap for CBOR tooling in LibYang, and that's what we've done for this hackathon. It's still ongoing. We haven't fully come to push the code, but the details are in the link to the presentation there. Another issue we faced is that there is no particular Yang model defined for the notification data, as is mentioned in the HTTPS notif draft. Though they've mentioned to follow the particular examples, there is no Yang model as of now, which would make it difficult for us to request for SIDs from IANA. But I think from reading from the other drafts, it looks like everything is going to be using Yang push Yang models, but there is nothing currently for the HTTPS notif draft. Yeah. So we would like to know if the working group would want to give any more additional comments, or was interested in adopting this document, and any other questions as well. Yeah.
So Mahesh speaking as a contributor. First of all, thank you to the authors for bringing forth the draft, and more importantly, actually following it up with an implementation, because that truly shows value behind the draft itself. One additional comment, I know that this might be short notice, but tomorrow I believe the Yang Push team is trying to do a demo, and I wonder if the demo for this can be included as part of that, if there's time for it or not. Okay, so Alex says, sorry, Tomas says yes. So the only question that I had was in terms of preference for encoding. I think what I understood was that you would have support for all three, but the preference would be CBOR, maybe JSON, and followed by XML. Is that true, or how does someone indicate a preference? How does the receiver, I guess, in this case, indicate preference for which encoding they want to use?
Currently, in our implementation, it is user configurable. However, from the results, it is ideal to use CBOR in like bandwidth constrained networks. But again, it could be based on the preference of the operator, and any of the encoding could be used. And it is user configurable in the implementation.
Alex Insaleon, I just want to second your comment on the missing IETF notification Yang module. I somehow feel that it is a bit of a pity that we did not went through rapidly to fix this gap, and just want to comment on that.
Yeah, thank you.
And very quickly, Rob Wilton. So it wasn't clear to me how a client can choose between whether it gets CBOR with named identifiers or CBOR with SID identifiers. It looked to me at the moment you just asked for CBOR, and it's left up to the server to decide what it sends. Whereas I think probably because the processing of those is quite different, you may need at the negotiation stage a way of identifying whether it's CBOR with SIDs or CBOR with named identifiers.
Right. Yeah, that is something we should consider about the negotiation part. For now, we assume that there's a set of publishers sending CBOR named identifiers, and a set of them sending SIDs and different ways to handle it. But yeah, we haven't really thought of how to configure that yet.
I would like
does
to
make sense.
close the queue. We're running out of time. Please take this to the list.
Mhm.
But before we stop, I would like to have a quick poll if the working group is interested in working on this document.
Oh, Kent as chair, while the poll is going on, a quick question. Currently, the document status is standard. Would this actually does it contain normative text, or is it better to be an informational document?
Um, I'm not really sure on this one, but I think it would be ideal to be in the same format as the HTTPS notif draft, because it's extending the draft to support further encoding. Yeah. I will get back on this. Yeah.
And maybe we can sort that out on the list after the meeting.
Okay.
Then know who is not interested in working on this, if you can go to the mic, or maybe take it to the list. Otherwise, we conclude that there is interest in this work. No, okay. Thank you very much. This concludes the NetConf session for IETF 123. Thank you for being here in person. Thank you for all attending remotely. Thank you to the note takers, and see you next time in Montreal. Tack Janne. Utmärkt för tids... Vad sa du? Ja. Min tanke kanske har fått lågt tal. Inte så negativt. Ja, det är kul att testa. Hi. Hi. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry for putting you over mic time, but
No, yeah, but I think it makes sense because I let it run.
Yeah, I knew
Yeah, so it's not your
fine.
So it's on me. I let every discussion run. I thought it might make sense when we have ample time.
Yes.
We can just like.
I'll keep make sure there's time for last presentation.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Jan also helped me like check. No,
but I was aware.
Yeah, I was aware.
Did the satellite folks talk to you? So there's folks that are doing delayed target networking have their own manageability model that they're trying to use Yang, make it hit 0-bit. They would be probably willing to pay some people to help them do Yang from the IETF for the satellite stuff, which might be interesting. So, don't you're listening as well, Bert?
Yes, I'm listening.
So, and both of your names have been mentioned that you might be interested in this. So, Guy, Rick Taylor is one of the people to reach. They're going to try and set up a meeting with me. I said, look, I'm willing to help you a bit, but I don't have much time on this. But the discussion about maybe paying somebody to help them. Because they've tried to do all sorts of stuff, like rewriting the Yang with fusion extensions and things. It's like, maybe it's like 6 minutes.